Steliana Economu is a mother, leader coach, public speaker, and awarded author. Her books, Mothers as Leaders, received the 2019 Global Win Conference Corporate Award for contribution to feminine leadership. During the pandemic and school's lockdown, media profiled her view and her story on the link between leadership and good parenthood. Last year, Steliana left her corporate career in Shell to focus on her dream, inspiring and helping women to enjoy both career success and family joy. Today, she will speak about Dare to Dream. You can have it all: career, family, and life. Steliana, welcome to Equal Pay Day.
Hello, everyone. Greetings from The Hague. And wow, what a story from Antonia. I feel like we had such an example of mother leader that my story will just follow and build on that. Every time when I say dare to dream, you can have it all, career, family, and life, I get kind of mixed reactions from women. Some get excited and some think, yeah, you certainly can't have it all. I mean, who are you to ask all of that? So I guess my thing here is, yeah, if you want to be happy, it's easy. If you want to be happier than your neighbor, if you want to be happier than your colleague, if you want to be happier than the lady on LinkedIn, it's always quite hard. So I find that a lot of times as women, we struggle of having it all because we tend to compare ourselves. So the answer I give to those people a lot of times is, yeah, you can have it all, but you need to be the one that defines that all. It needs to be your all. So I'll talk today a little bit about my story with motherhood, with the good and the bad, let's put it that way. The link with leadership, how did I end up writing a book, although English is not my native language. And I also have some advice I would give to the younger version of me, Steliana of early 30s, who said, I don't want to have kids because it will be a problem in my career. So before we do that, I have a question for everyone listening and everyone giving their day to be here. It's a Saturday, so it's a big gift. The question I would ask is, if you have a magic wand, imagine you have a magic wand and you can choose one thing. You can choose one thing that you can turn from dream into reality. One thing about your life now, one thing about yourself. What would that be?
Okay.
You have it? Hold on to that. Maybe the word big dream is not on it, but that's your burning desire. Hold on to that and think about it as you listen to this talk. So my journey with motherhood started about 10 years ago. I was in London and I was having a leadership development role. I was facilitating programs, traveling all over the world. 1 month I was in Lagos, the other month I was in Calgary, and I was enjoying my life. And I became pregnant. And I told my colleagues, I said, don't worry, I'll just go for 11 months. That was my maternity leave. It's a project. I'll go deliver and I'll come back. It's just no big deal. Anyone who listens and is a mother probably is laughing of my assumption. So I went indeed to my maternity leave. I had my beautiful daughter, Cara, who's 9 now. And I think the first months I was in this bubble and I had no idea what was going on with me. I was angry on the world that they didn't tell me, what it means to be a mom. My daughter didn't do the one thing babies do. She didn't like to drink milk. And I got lots of advice. So I'm Romanian. So my mom from Romania would call and she would say, Forget about breastfeeding. In communist Romania, we gave them the bottles and we went to work. My mother-in-law in the Netherlands would say, think about room temperature because the babies, they might die. And I have my midwife in London who kept telling me I had to chill and it's okay to drink a glass of wine before breastfeeding because I just need to be happy. Now, I already figured that I wasn't really getting any better by listening to any of those advices, and it was quite confusing. So the penny dropped actually when I went back to work 6 months later, and I was in this training room in Lansbury. It's a place next to, in Teddington, a place next to London. I mean, Antonia probably knows it. So this big training room, I was in front doing what I normally used to do. I was teaching to a group of managers, mostly men, 20, and I think 2 of them were women. And I was telling them about patience, about influencing with integrity and all of those leadership skills. And I was telling them, your people look at you and they look at your behavior. It's not what you say. And as I was speaking, it's like a penny just dropped. I realized, wow, all those things I teach in management training when I speak about leadership, this is what I have at home. I should just take my own advice. Being a mother is not just a job description with tasks. It's actually a leadership experience. And I just became so fascinated about this new mindset. It's like suddenly I got this new pair of glasses. And then I went back and I could see everything that was happening to me, even the fact that my daughter became allergic to lots of stuff meanwhile. Like this challenge that was thrown at me, and I could learn from it. And being so curious, I started to ask myself, what if other mothers feel different? After all, I'm Romanian, educated, developing leaders, living in London. I'm sure others feel different. So I had this interview guide and I started to pick a group that I would interview. So I went on this discovery journey and I found mothers of 29, American. I looked at the Chinese mothers, somebody who moved from being in corporate to being a acupuncturist. I interviewed CEOs. I interviewed surgeons in the Netherlands, and I just learned so much. I was fascinated by everything, and it was helping me as well with my own problems. But you can imagine, it took me about 5 years, and I had this gift, right? All this information, I just felt like I can't possibly keep it for myself. And I told my husband one day, I said, I'm going to write a book about it. And he started laughing. He's like, write a book? You're not a writer. English is not your native language. And when are you going to do it? Meanwhile, I had my second child. My job was getting busier because I was promoted and I moved countries. So realistically speaking, it was no time. But I became a bit obsessed about it, obviously. And that's kind of where I started to think, okay, I'm gonna do this. I pulled it all together. And eventually, it became the book. But as I started to capture all this knowledge, I could see also what was different, because obviously everybody, learns from being a parent. But what makes the difference between women who have dreams and they want to achieve things, and the women who actually are able to achieve them, and some of those great examples from my book. And I asked them, how they define leadership, power, and ambition. And I want to share some of the quotes because, they was fascinating of what I learned. So, for instance, Carla was 60. She was a executive in a C-suite executive committee in a big company, about to retire, mother of 3. And I asked her, I said, how would you define ambition? And she said, ambition doesn't have for me a positive connotation. I like aspiration. It's a more positive word. Then she said, when something goes wrong, women tend to blame themselves. When men do something wrong, they blame somebody else. And she continued, I see it with my son and husband. Then I went, and I have another quote here from Katja. Katja, at the time, was 36. She took a career break because she had a burnout, and she was a stay-at-home mom at the time after having a career as marketing director. And when I asked her what leadership is, she said, leadership is daring to make decisions and allowing people to make mistakes, to learn. And what was even more fascinating is that at the moment Katja came back to work, and in a year and a half, she became vice president and joining the board of the company where she left. So again, fascinating story of a woman who did break through some of the challenges. And as I was listening to some of the stories, I started to see some of this differentiator. And I think Antonia already captured one, and I really loved it. I thought we were perfectly aligned. So one thing that differentiates women with ambitions from the one that actually do it, achieve them, is knowing yourself. So what are your strengths, your vulnerabilities, your biases? The other one is blossoming. And as I said, thank you, Antonia, because I think you showed that. It's about being out there, sharing your enthusiasm, letting your beauty to shine, daring to put your face on a website. The third one, the one that we tend to forget, is help. Asking for help and giving help. We're good at giving help, but sometimes we're not so good at asking for help. This is what I had to learn the hard way. The fourth one is exploring and being curious. And like now with the pandemic, some things don't work, but going out there, discovering the new trends, as Antonia said, she went online, she went on Instagram, she tried different things. And that's a great example of exploring. And the last one, but the most important one, is believing in yourself, even if other people don't believe, even if you get, bounce off rates from your website. And as an entrepreneur, for instance, it's quite disappointing, but keep believing in yourself and putting yourself out there. And those are the things that I saw that made the difference between women who have regrets and women who, are able to break through those challenges. And the other bit I discovered is this was me understanding motherhood. And there are not too many people that, when I tell them mothers are leaders, disagree with me. Mainly because I speak to women circles, so that could be a reason. But in general, people agree. But the question I kept having is, okay, if everybody agrees that a woman is a great leader, how come we don't have too many women at the top? How come it's something special when a woman gets promoted, that you, woman CEO, that's still special. So still, not even women believe sometimes that they can be great leaders. So what I figured out is it's something that has to do with the models we get in our childhood. So when I was in kindergarten, the image I had of a leader was a man on a horse. I mean, if you visit any European city, think about how many statues you find with a man on a horse. When I went to Google and I typed mothers as leaders in 2012, first picture that I got was Mother Teresa. Now, that tells you something. So we don't associate the image of mother with leader somehow. And that kind of gets into our mental model about leadership. And then, of course, I said, if I'm going to write this book, I will think about what makes someone a leader. I mean, not the book definition or the MBA things we hear. It's what do I think? So I kind of looked back into myself. I understood a bit my own journey. And I kind of figured out that some people say that, leadership is something that you're born with. And others say that you need to develop it. What I think is, in reality, we all are born with the capacity to lead. But we forget is that we're also born with the capacity to follow, because we need to belong. And at the same time, when we want to follow, we get drawn into something. So what happened is you hear a story, a beautiful story, like you hear the story of Antonia earlier. I was really inspired by that. So a woman tells you a story and you listen and you're drawn into it. And what happens is you follow and other people follow, and together you created the leader. That's all it is. It's not a man on a horse. But sometimes I think we need to kind of erase some of those images that we are given from our school in the past. As a kid, I mean, I was born in communist Romania. So my first crack in this romantic leadership idea of, frontline leader was in 1989. It was in December. So the ones which are older might remember that's when a lot of communist regime fell. So I was in my garden with my mom and I suddenly heard on the radio, revolution. It was like, the dictator left, we are free and happiness. And I was 9 and I was confused. And I asked my mom, I said, Mommy, why do they call him dictator? But he's our great father. I mean, we were brainwashed, right? He's our father. I mean, he gives us presents every time. And for me, I mean, he was Santa Claus in Western Europe. How could they say he's a dictator? And of course, my mom started telling me the stories and, things I realized that he wasn't Santa Claus. And of course, we were living in poverty. And it was like this, my ideal of leadership just crushed. And ever since then, in my youth, I was the rebel. I never trusted power. And I thought I believed in myself. And instead of looking on TV for great speeches, I started to look around me. So I probably like you, when you look around, you have a lot of models. So I learned from my mom about perseverance. I learned from my grandma generosity for the poor. I learned from my dad self-belief. And what I learned is actually that, you need to look in yourself and the people around you for models rather than what you hear in the media. So to go back to my first question, can you have it all? Yes, you can have it all. And what I cover also in my book at the end with some personal development exercises is that all needs to be defined for your own lens, what makes you happy. And traditional wisdom might tell you that when you come back after 2 years from maternity leave or 3 years, you are slower, you can't keep up with the technology. It's not true, right? These are all things that are being put in your brain. I came back and I asked for a promotion, and of course, people did not agree. But it's practically because I thought I do not agree with this assessment, mainly because of all the interviews I've done. But it's really about defining what is that all for you personally. And there were 3 things that I found useful, which I would have liked to have known when I was in my 30s, like 3 ingredients, if you kind of start at your beginning of the journey. And the 3, what I call as superpowers, if you want to fight the societal pressure, is clarity, courage, and choice. And also to think about you as a leader of a family, your partner as a co-leader, and the family as a team where everybody has responsibility. So when it comes to choice, it's just not only about making decisions. It is about making decisions, but it's also choosing the attitude you want to have to this work-life balance and what motherhood is and is not. The other bit where I think about choice is learning to drive your own bus. So whatever works in somebody else's career might not work for you. That's what I found out, right? I could not have my husband stay at home and take care of the kids because he also wants to have a career. So I have a different husband than other women. I have a different career desire. So what works for somebody else might not work for you. The other one is clarity. And clarity is an area where I have to bring something from my business role to home. So anybody who is in corporate business roles will understand stakeholder mind map, right? You're pretty good at it in management. Who are your stakeholder customers? What are your expectations? But sometimes I found that at home, it's more difficult because you're dealing with mom and mother-in-law and teachers, and you're trying to please everyone. And guess what? The only one you end up not pleasing is yourself. So thinking about what do you want from the other person, what are your needs, and being able to have those clarity conversations, it's really important. And yes, you might need to bring a bit of a business mindset at home, and that's healthy. It protects you and puts some boundaries. And with choice, with clarity, you go pretty far. But the last one, it's courage. And Antonia displayed a lot of it, and I think she said a lot about those things. But courage is really important, because if you're raised like me, so again, I've been raised in Romania, Eastern European mom, who's kind of told me you need to behave like a lady, to respect, to show up in a feminine way, which was great, but it didn't really help me in an assertive, competitive, male-dominated world I was working in. So I realized that I had to, put myself out there, because I work for great companies like Kraft, Nike, Vodafone, Shell, and there were a lot of development opportunities. But in 20 years, nobody came to my desk to tell me, Steliana, would you like to be promoted? Steliana, would you like to get a pay raise? Obviously not. So I always had to go out there. It wasn't just annoying my boss every day, but it was always like, the moment I would say yes to something which was not in my pay grade, which was higher, and I would say, I don't know how to do this, but I'll figure out. That's what got me noticed. And I'm not saying that you need to say yes to extra work, right? It's really saying yes to the work that is at a higher level, and it will bring you the development you need. And the courage for me is also about having the courage to ask for help before you get flat out. Ask for help from, friends, neighbors when you need help with the kids, asking for help from colleagues, because even if you think you want to prove yourself, because even if you're a mother, you can work long hours. The only thing that is going to happen is burning yourself out. And I've been there. So all I can say is asking for help in time requires courage. And also, it also shows maturity. It also shows that you know your power. So and what I would say is there's no perfect mothers, so don't try to become one. There's also no perfect leaders. At the same time, I think if the world would allow women to lead in their own way, with authenticity, with care, I think we will have a different type of leadership, especially during the pandemic. And at the same time, it's this great balancing act of motherhood and work. It really depends on how much we enjoy each of them. So if you enjoy more being at home with your kids, you could make the choice to invest more time there. If you enjoy more of being at work and delivering, don't feel guilty. That's who you are. No, don't deny yourself that. So it's a personal choice, and it's the key thing is enjoyment. So last year when I founded Mothers as Leaders, after my book got the award and success, I realized that where I needed to help, it was not so much with more executive coaching and more kind of leadership development courses. My topic became enjoyment. So I always say I'm there to help women enjoy leadership success, but also family joy. So thank you. Dare to dream and hold on to that dream you mentioned earlier. It will happen.
Thank you, Steliana. And we have a nice message for you in our chat. If I can read it, thank you. We need more models like you mentioned. Great one as a grandmom, as I remember. Whole life giving all she had with love. Thank you, Steliana. And ladies, if you have any question for Steliana, you can raise your virtual hand.
And I think we have already Lenka Mrazova.
Yeah.
Lenko, could you please ask the question? Thank you.
Yes. So, hi, Steliana. Greetings from Prague. I would like to come to the beginning of your presentation when you speak about your book. Mm-hmm. How did you find that excellent, catchy title, Mothers as Leaders? And more important, tell us, where did you find the time for writing? You were in a global position, small kids, 2 kids home, your husband. So where did you find the time?
Good question. And this is what I have to say. I struggled back in 2014. First of all, let's say I spend a lot of time writing at night, but that's mainly because something switched in me. When I listened to the story of political refugee Tanya, who was tortured and she kept her political ambition, and I had her life story in my head, I just felt like I have to do it. It's my duty. And yes, it became my hobby. Instead of watching Netflix in the evening at 9:30, I would write. So yes, I did write everything between 9:30 and 1 at night. And the other bit is I did not make it as a target. I just said, I'm doing this for me. So I didn't write the book in 6 months. It was a long process of 5 years of interviewing. I had help, so asking for help. I had an editor who actually helped me all the way. So yes, time was a challenge. But if you believe in something and you go out there and you ask for help, somehow the universe helped me. So logically, I don't have an answer, but somehow it happened.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Steliana. Please, if you can stay with us, you can chat with our ladies. Lenka, thank you so much for your question.
And Steliana, you have many questions in our chat, so I think it will be great if you can stay with us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Again.
Clapping.
Clapping.